We're going to give it just a couple minutes here before everybody comes in because we've got a bunch of people still entering our room. So for those of you just joining, this is Michelle Savage with XBRL US, and we're going to get started in about 1 minute. We still have a few people coming in, so we just want to make sure everybody is able to access the event. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm Michelle Savage, and you are here with the rest of the XBRL US team. You can see Campbell Pride, our President and CEO, David Torriello, our VP of Operations, and Mark Ward, our Applications Manager. And we're excited to talk to you today about an XBRL API update. We have a new Excel add-in, and we also have a lot more to share. So with that, I'm going to move on to our topics. What we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to give a very brief overview of XBRL and XBRL Data. I think most of you are pretty familiar with our organization and with XBRL, but I think we have some new people coming in too. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Excel add-in. I'm going to start the conversation and then turn it over to David Torriello. David is then going to hand off to Mark Ward, who's going to cover some updates to our API. And then David's going to talk a little bit about Jupyter Notebooks, and then Campbell is going to close off with SEC Tools. This is an application that we've had for quite some time, which many of you are familiar with. We've made some upgrades to it and want to share those with you. So first, just quick background on XBRL. I think everybody knows XBRL is an open, non-proprietary data standard. It is the only standard that handles financial data in a very consistent structured manner, but also handles lots of other types of data, energy data, text data, even text and tables, lots of different types of content. It renders data fully understandable and machine readable in a very consistent manner. And I think very importantly to a lot of the implementations that we see around the world is that it can seamlessly adapt to changes in reporting requirements and technology. And this is a really important factor when it comes to regulatory programs like the one we're going to talk about today. There are about 180 plus implementations of XBRL around the world, and those cover all different types of programs, from financial regulatory programs, capital markets, business registrars, tax authorities, government oversight, and there are even some programs that we call standard business reporting, which is reporting of business to government and kind of back and forth. Lots of different reporting entities submit their data in XBRL format, from public and private companies to government entities and banks. In the United States, there are a number of regulators that use XBRL today. The FDIC was the first program that went into place, so all banks have to report, and they've been doing so since 2005. The SEC was shortly thereafter, and all public companies, mutual funds, and credit rating agencies have to report in XBRL. And this year, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is launching this program so that all public utilities in the United States will have to report. And starting next year, we have our first state program. The state of Florida is requiring all its local governments to report in XBRL format. Outside the US, as I said, there are lots of different programs, but the newest one that's kicking in this year is with the European Securities Markets Authority. And in that program, all companies in European Union countries and also in the UK will be required to report their data in XBRL format, actually an inline XBRL. So how do you get XBRL data? Okay, there are lots of different ways to get it. Today we're going to talk specifically about the API, but there are a number of commercial applications, and lots of those are available from XBRL US members. Organizations like Altova, CalcBench, Cognitive Quant, Idacity, Intrinio, Refinitiv, which is formerly Thomson Reuters, and Tagnify, and our newest startup member, Bright Analyst. So please check out those applications on our site. But for those of you who want to get started on your own and give it a go using the XBRL API, this is an open source application. It's available to anybody, members and non-members alike, although members do get additional access to data. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Excel add-in, which has been developed to work specifically with our API. And actually, before I get started, I wanted to mention that if you do have questions as we go through the presentation today, just click on the Q&A link that you see at the top of your screen and you can submit questions. And we actually have our first question. Can you discuss what governments are using XBRL? Why don't we save that question for the end, because I want to make sure that we cover everything. And I think Campbell can probably talk specifically about all the different government agencies that are making XBRL data available. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about the SEC data that's available for public companies here in the US. So if you want to get the XBRL API, the easiest way to do that is just to go straight to our website. I'm going to do that here. And if you go to our homepage, go over to the Using Data section, and you'll see the XBRL API on our dropdown. And if I go there, it's going to bring up a whole bunch of information about the XBRL API. I'm going to go straight to look at these three buttons in the center. So get data in XBRL, in Excel rather. I'm going to click on that. It's going to bring me to the Microsoft Store, and it's going to show me the application called XBRL Filed Data. So click there, go to continue. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Excel. So this is giving me just the basic, Excel spreadsheet. And I'm sorry, my control panel is actually covering my ribbon up here. But you can see this is the traditional Excel spreadsheet with file, home, insert, page layout. And you can see that there's now a new button called XBRL Filed Data. And if I click on that, it's going to bring up a whole new set of navigation buttons. So right now I'm going to turn it over to David Torriello, and I'm going to stop sharing here. And he's going to walk you through actually getting data in the Excel add-in.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Let me share my screen and kick it off here. Hold on just 1 second. Is my screen up? Great, thanks. So Michelle brought you in on a page on our website, just to go back to it, off of the home page. There's a menu called Using Data. Michelle was looking at the XBRL API. It's a drop-down off of the Using Data menu. I've got a page up called XBRL Data Community. The same three buttons are there, and they do the same three things. If I was to click on Get Data in Excel, same thing would happen. So I bring up this page. Michelle launched her Excel from the desktop. This is the exact same page that Michelle was looking at, except it's logged in under my identity. If I want to work in Excel on the desktop, I click there. If I want to switch it over and just work online, I can open the Excel document in Excel online. The requirement for using the add-in is that you have a Office 365 or M365 account, so that you can take advantage of a lot of the newer features of Excel. Michelle mentioned the ribbon that comes out of this XBRL filed menu option. There are 6 buttons, as you can see. The one labeled Login and Query Wizard, that's really where you get started, as long as you have a client ID and secret. If you don't have a client ID and secret, you need to come on over to our website, click this Get a Free Account and Credentials button. In the online version of Excel, you have to allow the window to open. And when the window opens, there'll be a page that looks a little bit like this. You'll need to register for a free account or log in here, and then there'll be an interface that'll let you create those client ID, and secret pairs. If I log out, I've already logged in, but to show you how easy it is, I'll log out, then I'll log back in. I'm going to provide my email, and password. I get a confirmation that it's been successful, and I'm logged in. Once you log in, the task pane on the right, the query wizard changes. And you get a little bit of an instruction that says one search parameter from the list of options that appear. So first things first, we've got a series of functions. They're actually objects that are connected to the XBRL public filings database that we built and maintained several years ago. We've now attached this XBRL API to it so that anyone can draw data back from it, data that's been filed with the SEC at this point, but we're also researching other data that can either be conformed to the XBRL 2.1 specification or that exists in XBRL format. Step back. For now, right, we'll just take a look at the text in the wizard describing the few endpoints that we've made available through the wizard. The fact endpoint that'll pull back factual data from reports. The report endpoint, that's going to give you a list of reports and some details about those reports. Relationship, network, and assertion endpoints are all available. In addition, there are a number of other endpoints, and this Browse Online Documentation button goes to a web page that'll explain to you all about the different configurations for these endpoints. We're going to keep it simple for right now. We just want to get to the data. So I'm going to choose the fact endpoint. Uh-oh. Oh my. This is the live demo. The best of a live demo.
David, while you're doing that, I just want to answer a couple of questions that came in. One question that came in was, well, there was a point made that I was going too fast, and David created a very simple video, which we will email out to everybody after the session, which walks you through, kind of step by step exactly how to do this. And then the second question that we received, from whatever tool, when it is accessed, is the data public for use or subject to license? It is public for use. It is openly available. We're basically getting, as David said, this is pulling from a database that we've created. So we get an RSS feed from the SEC, which frankly anybody could get. We pop it into our database, and then we make it accessible through the API. And the API provides very detailed access because, given that it's XBRL data, it's structured at a very, very atomic level. So we're trying to show how you can aggregate it very easily using the API.
Thanks, Michelle. For those of you that were watching on the screen, I had a couple of issues with the login. I think it was probably due to the fact that I've logged in and logged out quite a few times. Once you get logged in, you should be able to stay logged in for several days at a time. And if you get prompted to go back and log in, generally speaking, all you need to do is put in your username and your password. So here we are at the fact endpoint. And just a quick look, you can search by a number of different methodologies. You can search by the name of the entity if you know what company or companies you want to look at. If you know their CIK, that's an SEC term that identifies a company or an entity by a specific numeric sequence. Or you can select a report by the entity name. We'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes, but let's assume that I just have some companies that I want to get some data about. So I look for Ford Motor, and it looks like Ford Motor Company exists. The CIK field gets populated. let's say I want to compare it, because that's what I am really interested in. I want to compare it with General Motors company. Let's say I'm interested in Harley Davidson as well. So we'll put 3 vehicle companies together. Then you have some decisions to make. If I choose report by entity name, that's going to override these CIKs. So I want to leave that alone. I could filter by the concepts that I want to get, but maybe I just want to look at data from a couple of years to see what it's all about. I'll get the annual data. And then I'm going to find out a little bit more about the specific fact information. Here in this data to return list are all of the different bits of information that you can get back from our database about the factual information. So I want to know what the name of the concept is. I want to know a little bit about the fact value for the concept. And I want to know the time period, because remember I asked it for what year that data was from. And if I scroll down through the rest of it, that's good enough for me. Let's just get started. So I go to a fresh sheet. My cursor's down in A1. Search. Wow. There it is. All kinds of data. The concept local name, the fact value, and the period fiscal year. But I can't really tell much about it. I don't know what company it is. So I go back to my data to return. And let's say I add entity name. I press the control key so that all the existing values are retained. So I'm just adding entity name to this query. I click search again. Now I know a little bit more about it. Now I know not only the name of the concept, I know which entity it's associated with. I know the fact value, and I know the timing for it. So I've got data, and that's great. Now I can copy that data, go to another sheet, paste it in as values, and start manipulating it. I couldn't do that over here because this cell A1 is actually the formula that's used to bring that data back. But that's a pretty powerful piece because you can manipulate this formula. Now that it's put down in your spreadsheet, you can start changing things around. We'll come back to that notion in just a minute. I want to go to a little bit about the wizard itself. A couple of things to mention. I've got 3 CIKs, I've got 3 years worth of data, and I've got a lot of concepts. Maybe I just want to pare that down. Maybe I don't want to see every concept in the report, but I want to find something like assets. So this list of concepts is actually querying the API and is bringing back concepts from one of the most recent taxonomies, US GAAP taxonomies. So if I'm looking for assets, I type in assets, I get the front side description or the front side label, what it would look like on a financial statement. And then I get the camel case concept local name. So in this list, which is alphabetically sorted, if I scroll down a bit, I do eventually get to assets somewhere in this list, but maybe I ran past it. Trust me, it's in there. Let me add liabilities for the sake of moving things along here. And let me add liabilities, and stockholders' equity. Right, so now I'm asking for only 3 concepts, or what I think is only going to be 3 concepts. What I would need to do to get the face financial detail is to make sure that I'm not showing any facts that have dimensions. For those of you that may be new to XBRL or new to table structures, think about dimensions as data that is lower down in a report, that is perhaps regions of the world where a company has sales. Those dimensions get summed up onto the primary financial statement. So you want to look at the data without dimensions. So I come back to my A1 where I had all of this detail, and I search now, and hopefully I come back with something a little more manageable. Now it starts looking a little more familiar. I've got assets, I've got liabilities and stockholder equity, I've got companies, I've got periods, good stuff. I don't want to copy this out though. I don't want to have to keep copying the detail out, but I want to know which company and which year. I want to start sorting, and I want to start managing the data. So I start by coming back into the formula, right? I know I've asked for all of these things. I've searched these CIKs, these elements, these years, right? And I'm returning concept, uh-oh. One of the things that Microsoft does is limits a formula to 255 characters. So the highlight here is where that 255 character limit is reached. There's a quote, a comma, and another quote. That breaks that formula up, or breaks that query up, and then the concatenate function is used to join those two together. So it is a string. So I know that if I make any edits on this side, it's probably not going to work. Fortunately, I'm able to go after that 255 characters, and I'm going to add some sorting. And this is all in the documentation I mentioned, the documentation that's linked up here, browse online documentation. There's a bit about sorting, there's a bit about limiting, there's a bit about the other kinds of filters that you can do on the API. So let's sort by concept name ascending, and let's sort by entity name ascending. And we're going to do one other thing. Because I don't want to sort by the concepts first, I want to sort by the entity first. I'm going to move entity. This is going to mess me up. I am going to move entity first. And I'm going to put my break and hope that this works. Right? It looks like I lost entity name for some reason. Maybe because I broke it. Yeah, I guess I broke it in the wrong spot. Let's try this. And that's not going to work either. Make a liar out of me. Anyway, let me try to go back and fix what I have broken. What is, okay. And now I've really broken it. Anyway, sorry. But I guess that raises the issue that you kind of got to get familiar with the API and start thinking about ways to move away from using the wizard, which is a good tool to start a query, move away from using the wizard to owning the queries and editing the queries and setting the queries up in a way that's going to let you make sure that you get the data reliably, because the data is always there. Well, now I'm just spinning. Whoa. In my worksheet. Hang on.
You did
Just
have questions?
a little bit
If I
easier.
could,
Just on that is one of the things you may want to do is just use the screen on the right hand side, and that'll bring back the effectively the query, and that's what David was messing with. What you can do is just copy that what's in the concatenate out into a separate cell. The length of a regular cell in Excel is pretty much unlimited. I think it's like 30,000 characters. So you can just copy that out, then you can actually then just reference that formula, that API string in another cell. And then that way you don't have to worry about the concatenation, and it makes it a little bit easier.
Two more things. Thanks, Campbell. I appreciate it. I've reset the query. I'll show you some worked up queries and some templates that we've posted on our website that might be helpful in getting you started in addition to this wizard. Let's go back and look. I know I mentioned Ford Motor Company, and I know I mentioned this report wizard. So if I type Ford Motor Co., right, because I know that's how it's identified in SEC filings, I get a nice list of all of the filings that Ford Motor Company has submitted that are in XBRL format. And all I need to do is to choose one of those filings, which I did. And as soon as I do that, the entity name and the CIK fields that I had worked so hard to put 3 values in, they become grayed out. But the advantage is that now, if this is a report that contains data from 18, 19, or 20, now I know that I'll be able to pull the exact same data, but it's only going to be for that one company. And it's only going to be the report data. It's not going to be the factual data. It's just going to be the top level data for that report. So that's another one of the objects here. One of the last things I wanted to do is to come back to this community page. I mentioned that we have a couple of templates. They're right at the top. One is an activity that has a few basic queries. The other one is a spreadsheet that we developed in Google first. And I guess that's one of the points that I'd like to make. This is going to flip over to my desktop application. And that is that the underlying code for this wizard is based on the code that was originally developed for our Google Sheet add-on. So the formula XBRL show data is almost identical to what's in Google. And that makes converting from Google to Excel and back to Google pretty easy. It's a matter of doing a find and replace and making sure you have the right formula, whether it's XBRL show data or just plain show data, depending on the platform that you're in. So this is a querying tool that should show, oh, I have to enable editing and restart my wizard. I'm logged in. So now here is a template, pretty well finished. It just has some very basic queries that does the same thing, right? Well, what's the query? It's this blue text down below. And so as you work with the API, one of the things that you will start being able to do is literally reading the string and understanding what's being queried. Last but not least, a finished template goes something like this, where the green fields are literally parameters, or excuse me, variables that you can change, and it will change the entire template. So instead of looking at Google, Apple, and Microsoft, we'll keep going with our Ford, General Motors, and Harley Davidson, and get a very simple balance sheet with XBRL data. So, Michelle, I don't know if there are any other questions at this point.
Yes, we actually have quite a few questions. Some of them are very specific about the tool, so I don't know if we want to get into that level of detail, but and some of them I think, David, you might want to just go through and just respond to directly when we turn it over to Mark, but let me see if there's some. One question that was kind of interesting: how does the concept dropdown differentiate pulling concepts between the US GAAP taxonomy and the IFRS taxonomy? Because obviously, some companies report in IFRS, some companies report in US GAAP.
Yeah, that's a good question. This filter by concept name, it's actually based on, I think it's the 2020 US GAAP taxonomy. So if you're looking to use IFRS concepts, you'll be able to do that, but you'll need to specify. Kimball, help me out. I think you'll need, will you be able to do it? You should be able to do it, but it's not going to be in a drop-down format.
At the moment, we don't have the IFRS in a drop-down format. It just becomes too much. But if people want that, we could put another drop-down for different taxonomies. We kind of want to avoid that. If you want to see what the list is, you can see David was just showing facts, but you can actually pull information from specific taxonomies. So you could just create a sheet if you wanted to very easily, and then just give me a list of all the API. You can just pull a list of what all the concepts are in a particular taxonomy. So that drop down is actually just making an API request to get the US GAAP. So if you wanted to do IFRS, then you can just put that query in a separate sheet and get a list of them. If something that's people wanting to do, we could certainly add another view that's set up for IFRS taxonomies as well. But if you want to get it, you just have to do a separate API request and have that data coming back into a sheet.
Thanks, Campbell. Michelle, do you want to move forward or?
Sure. Let's see. Another question: is there a ticker symbol search?
There is. You can actually set up this. This is a ticker symbol search right here. So in the balance sheet example or in the API spreadsheet, right? It simply is looking for entity ticker and then type in your characters and go. Campbell, I don't know if you want to say anything more specific about it.
Yeah, I just go back to the GUI interface on the right-hand side. That's just really a small extract of, just to make it easier to pull out these queries. But to David's point, there is a ticker. You can search on ticker, you can search on CIK, you can search on our internal entity identifier that we have in the system. So I think we've got 3 things you can search on, and over time we're going to expand those to other ones as well. But at the moment, those are the 3 entity identifiers you can use.
I guess I'll put in the plug, consult the documentation.
Okay, another question that we received: how does the API handle extensions?
So all concepts are considered, they're basically included in the API. So if you know what the concept name is, you can search for information on that. So basically, and we talk about US GAAP in there, which David was searching on, but every single submission that's made by a company, they're effectively submitting their own taxonomy. So there's actually an area, David just showed the fact drop down, but there's a whole bunch of other drop downs where you can start searching taxonomies. So you can, for example, for a given filing, give me all the extensions in a filing. There are some parameters which allow you to search only on items which are included in the base published taxonomies by the SEC, or you can search on concepts that are extensions provided by companies, but plus you can search on the specific namespace. So we give you lots of options to be able to basically pull information that's extensions.
Okay, then another question: is there a way to query or get block quotes or text blocks for qualitative data? And this individual specifically asked about content in the MD&A or CDNA, and essentially text blocks are available throughout the 10Ks and Qs and different filings that the companies submit. but there are only certain text blocks that are required to be tagged in XBRL, and those are things like full disclosures. Those are available and can be extracted through the API. Things like MD&A at this point in time, the SEC does not require to be tagged. So therefore, we don't have access to that data. But who knows what will happen down the road.
Not quite. We do actually, and I'll show this a bit later, we actually can actually do text search on the MD&A, but it's not in a format. So we actually do have that. And I can't remember if that's available in the API or not. Is it, Mike? Do you recall? And then on the other thing for the text blocks, there's actually, and David may have shown this, there's a value link field you can get back. And if you pull that back, that gives you a link to the actual disclosure in Excel. But obviously, the text box can't really be shown in Excel at all. But it will pull back a link that you can then click on and you can look at those.
Okay, another question, David, I think this one's for you. What are membership options? You know, we talked about some portion of data is available for free to anybody using the API, but then membership is required for a greater amount of data. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. So anybody can use the API. We will let you draw back up to 1,000 rows of data for a specific query. As a non-member, you'll be able to get that 100 rows at a time. So you'll need to repeat the same query 10 times if there are 1,000 facts or 1,000 rows of data. You'd have to repeat the same query 10 times and used what's known as a offset parameter. Let me pull up my documentation. Up at the very top of the documentation, we talk a little bit about the fields, right? That's the data that's coming back. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the whole row's worth of data. That whole row's worth of data, the single record, right? You can manipulate to get the first 100 rows automatically. Then after that, you add, here it would be report.offset, use the endpoint and then offset, and then put in 100. And that'll start the sequence at 100 as opposed to starting it at 1. You can keep doing that. That's for a non-member, 100 rows at a time, up to 1,000 rows for a query. Basic individual members, you can do that up to 2,000 rows. We'll give you 500 at a time. And then everybody else who is a member, like a power user, sole practitioner, any of our organizational members, you get 2,000 rows at a time. And if you need to use the offset, keep using the offset as much as you like. If it takes you 25, 30 offsets, not likely. Well, I suppose it could. But if it takes you 25 or 30 offsets to get 50,000 rows of data, then yeah, it's all yours. So again, non-members, 100 to 1,000. Basic individual members, 500 to 2,000. Everybody else, 2,000. Keep going.
Okay. I don't know, David, should we take more questions or should we move on in the program?
Let's try to move to Mark. Mark, I'm going to pass it across to you, all right?
All right. Thanks, David. Let me share my screen. All right. So since our last update, our last update on the API, we made a number of changes. These changes generally fall in about 3 different categories. They're efficiency and field updates and new functionality. Efficiency updates basically happen when we take a look at the requests that are made to the API itself and look at the ones that take longer amounts of time. We then rework the back end by making changes to codes, the queries, or the database, or some combination to adjust and reduce the amount of time it takes for those requests. So that's a constant ongoing task. The next update are field updates, and those are usually divided into making new field, either creating new fields or exposing other fields in the database, or by changing existing fields. In this iteration, we've added a number of new fields. One Campbell actually mentioned earlier, which was a fact value link. And this is actually a URL that that allows you to open the browser and points to the fact value. This is extremely helpful when the fact is a text block containing HTML. The next one is member typed value, and that is basically the value of a member if it's within a typed dimension. Now, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, tell if a value would be in a typed dimension or an explicit dimension, and that's where member value comes in. It will always show it no matter which type of dimension it is. So that kind of takes a little workload off of you. We've added document type to the fact endpoint. Before it was previously only in the report endpoint. So this just makes it more available without you having to completely keep requerying the API. The document set number, it basically tells how many inline HTML files are within that particular filing. Then let's move on to updated fields. Now, a lot of these fields are updated, and actually some of the new fields are actually added in response to questions or desires that our members submit to us. So in these particular cases, we had these fields available before, but we actually made them searchable afterwards, so that the people requesting these was able to refine their particular queries. So, we've got balance type, is abstract, entity name, the DTS entity name, which allows you to search for the DTS or taxonomy of each of the entities. So, that makes it a lot easier to pull that particular information. So the last type of the last update that we have is we added a new feature, and earlier we got a question about being able to search for text blocks, and so this feature is actually for you. So what this allows you to do, this we've added to our fact and document endpoints, and it allows you to search for any terms that you wish within either the fact values or in document content. In order to do that, you would go ahead to the different endpoints, and you would use a field called text search, and you would add your values to that text search. Now, this particular parameter is only a parameter and is not valid to add to the field. So you can't output the text search at the same time. This does introduce a couple new fields which are only valid when you're using the text search, and that's example, which displays a snippet including your search terms highlighted and a highlighted text. And actually, I have a couple examples right here. So in this one, we're looking for tsunami in Japan, and we're using a notation to say, make sure that tsunami is actually occurring in the document before Japan. When you're using the searching, you can use the syntax that's used by the Sphinx search engine, which is the underlying engine that we use for doing these particular searches. Anyway, as I was saying, you have the fact example that returns, and then you also have the highlighted text, which returns the entire value or the entire document content with your search terms highlighted. So you can take those fields, put them into a browser, and display them nicely. One other limitation for when you're doing a document search is that if you actually request the highlighted text back, or the content back, then you'll be limited to only one document at a time. This is because the documents that are in the filings are extremely large. So, so that pretty much covers the main updates that we've done this time. So, that's better performance on some of the queries. We've added a bunch of new fields or exposed them so that they can be searched. And we've added the text search. So that allows you to go ahead and search for those text blocks. Next, I'll go ahead and pass it back to, actually, did we have any questions? No? Okay.
I don't think Mark, I don't think we have any questions specific to the updates.
Okay, well, that went well. Well, in that case, we'll go ahead and move on, and David will talk about some Jupyter Notebooks. So I'm going to pass this back to you, David.
Great, thanks, Mark. So just quickly, because I want to get over to Campbell. In addition to the Excel work, we also heard from a couple of academics who said there was some interest in things called Jupyter Notebooks. I myself wasn't aware of them, but they're pretty cool. So at the bottom of the XBRL data community page are a couple of bits that have these binder links. These are literally small little applications that will get you logged into the API using your client ID and secret. And let you run queries. For those of you that are in research settings, it's my understanding that these are pretty helpful in terms of being able to pass results. You can see some results down at the bottom of this page, pass some results along to colleagues who can continue your research. Anyway, I've added my email and password, right? The way a Jupyter Notebook works is you just run the specific cells. So this one is a running cell. It's got an asterisk. It's waiting until I hit the enter key. Then I'm going to paste in my client ID. Hit the enter key. My client secret. Right? And my access token is all set. What that means is I can modify the queries that are down here, or the query, excuse me, that's down here, very similar to how it's set up in the API, looking for those fields, right? Defining those elements, the concept local name, right? A few CIKs. If I run all from here, it jumps down to the bottom because the rest of these have all run. And newsflash, I get data back. So pretty helpful. Helpful, why? Because I can save this. If I'm a programmer, right? I can save this off as a Python file, take it into my own application, and then start building out. It will give you the scripting that you need to get yourself a login, a working login, and a mechanism to refresh your token. That was it. It's that easy. There's two flavors here. Python, there's also one in R, if you're tuned into R, the statistical programming language. I'm going to pass it along to Campbell. Campbell.
Okay, thanks, David. I'm just going to share my screen. And there's been a number of questions that have been answered just while I'm doing that. And I've gone through and I've typed answers to most of them. So if you're waiting for an answer for your question, then they should be in the answer box for you to see. Okay, so my screen's coming up. So I'm just going to talk about the, we have an application called the SEC Tools application. This application, it used to be in Flex. We've recently rewritten it. So then there is additional functionality that's going to be coming over the next couple of months. But pretty much most of the search features that you've had before are available in this tool. So if you want to go to it, you can see my screen, you can just go to SEC Tools, XBRL.us, and then it'll come up. And you've got, for those of you who'd used the Flex application before, this is kind of similar. It's just been rewritten in JavaScript. So you can, which is a bit different. You can log in with Google now, which this makes it easier. So if you forget, you don't have to remember your password, or you can put your password in, so you can log in. And this has been rewritten to use the API where we can. So a lot of this does use the API. So a lot of the information that you can get through the SEC tools, you can get through the API. But sometimes it's just easier to use this if you just want to look up something quickly and pull very specific data in if you know where to get it. I actually have found now with the Excel add-on that it's easy to use either or, but so this basically just has a menu here pulling data. You can also, if you're an SEC filer, you can use this to check a filing. You can upload a filing and you can run it from here as well if you want to validate your filing. And just on the API, if you look at the documentation, you can actually validate your filing through the API as well. So you can do that too if you want. I'm not going to show that, but it's there and it's available. So you can search. This just gives you a list of the last 200 companies that have filed. You can search companies just by concept. You can search by values reported. So this is kind of very similar to what we have in the API as well. You can get a summary of concepts reported. This is just by looking for a company, and you can give you a summary of them. You can search by text. You can search by label usage. So maybe just look at the text search. So we've got two options here. You can search by fact, or you can search by documents. So like the example that Mark brought up before, I just use this example so I know I'm not going to get too much back. Tsunami, New Zealand, for example. There was a tsunami recently in New Zealand. I'm sure there's no one's going to be impacted by that. So if I can search on that, then that's just going to, and then I can filter it, and I'm going to get anyone who's reported it for these years here, and then you can see, this is the data that's been reported for it. Obviously, you can cut that down. If you want to get less, you can do that too. So you can, this makes it a few less on it. So these are the values that are reported. You can output this to HTML as well, which can be kind of handy. And then everything that came back, you get all those footnotes conglomerated together, and then it just highlights them. And this we had available in the Flex app, but it's sort of kind of kept that people like this, so you can get all that data and you can have it there. You can also output it to Excel as well. One of the other things we have here is documents. You can search by document. So this really, someone asked the question about the MD&A. You can pull that data. So so here's like an Autodesk, for example. This is the MDA section of Autodesk. So let's say I wanted to find all companies who have used this block of text, for example. I could put that in and then search on that. And so then that's basically going to give me all filings who have done that. So this will go away. And this is looking, when you're looking at documents, this is actually looking through the documents who have actually reported it. So obviously you can see Autodesk, they use the same text and multiple different filings through time. They keep repeating it. There's one here, Bentley Systems. It's like, why is that there? And if you can click on that, then you can go to the filing and then you can find it. It's weird they'd use the same text as, so I could look at our Autodesk, and they're saying, oh, our competitors are Autodesk, so they've obviously gone and taken Autodesk's filing and copied the relevant parts of it. So you can kind of search through this stuff. You can search by documents, which actually does include the MD&A, plus it includes basically anything that's going to be a document that's attached. The facts will allow you to search anything that's in the text blocks that are actually reported in XBRL. So you can see then those text blocks you can obviously filter by concept names or entities and get that data. So that's kind of how it works in terms of the text search. And then the taxonomy view and compare. This is some functionality that we have, so you can do searches on taxonomies, and you can compare between taxonomies as well. And so that's available too. The main point of this is basically uses the API to query a lot of this data. if you're technical, you can look at what the browser's doing and see what API calls are being made if you wanted to go and use the API to build your own application. So I'll stop sharing, and then if we've got any questions, we can go through those before we finish up.
Sure, thanks, Campbell. Yeah, we have received a bunch of questions. I'm not sure which ones have been answered. Okay, one question, where can I get the Jupyter Notebook file? David, you want to cover that one?
Sure, yeah, it's right on the API community page. So if you go back to XBRL US, on the right-hand side in the submenu, it says using data. The second option on the submenu is called XBRL Data Community. When you get to that page, scroll down in the list, the last two options, or second and third from the bottom, I think, are the Jupyter Notebooks for Python or IPython and R. Check them out.
Okay, great. And another question, I think this is for Mark. The text comment, the text search is a brilliant new feature. That's very nice. How far back in time does the text search allow? And can it be a general database search for the text? It'll be Mark or Campbell.
So it does actually go back through all time that has been indexed, and it's usually it's for a general database search for the text. The search terms use the Sphinx search, so that's how you would go ahead and search for those particular values.
On that, for all time, that's since XBRL filings have been available. I think
yes.
2008. So
since they existed, yes.
If I'm not familiar with Sphinx, it's like a similar search for Elasticsearch. You can go online and look up the search parameters that you can use. So you can do near search, 2 characters, or words near each other within 3 characters of each other, or whatever it may be. The things that are in the same sentence or in the same paragraph. So that kind of standard text search you can do. Someone had asked a question about regular expressions. We don't support regular expressions of the API at the moment, so no, you can't do regular expression searches at the moment.
Okay, and a question, I think this is one for you, Campbell. Is there documentation for SEC tools?
We have a documentation for the Flex application, which this kind of mirrors. So, but we only really put this application up in the last month. So we're actually working on that documentation to upgrade the documentation to support the JavaScript implementation. So yes, that's not available yet. But if you want to see documentation for that, you can look at the Flex application documentation, which works in a similar way. But we will hope to have that up the next month. So.
Okay, we did have a question that I think I answered online, but just does SEC tools require membership? And the answer is yes, it does. It does for that. The API is open and freely available for everyone. SEC tools requires a membership.
Michelle, can I get a couple of points on membership in here?
Oh, sure.
You don't need to be anything more than a basic individual member to make use of the company filings analysis in the SEC tools. So if you're looking to just make a couple of quick queries, that may be a decent option for you. The API, as Campbell said, or as I said, is free for anybody with some limitations to it. If you're designing a template, or if you put together a Jupyter notebook and you want us to take a look at it and think about posting it on our site in that XBRL API community area, send it along. It's good for, I think we said 6 months extension of an individual membership. And I forget what the organizational benefits are, but there are benefits for you. Help us build out the resources that make this API and the data behind it a useful mechanism for everybody. We have a lot of people who are in on the forums, members and non-members, who are asking questions and answering questions. And that's how the knowledge about the resources will grow over time. That's it.
Okay, and Campbell, it looks like you're answering this question online, but maybe you know, everybody else might benefit from the answer. Do you have any plans to make data to return? Oh, it just moved on me. Dropdown available.
Yeah, so we actually have we've documented how we're going to fix that. We'll make that better. At the moment, as David mentioned, you got to push the control key and select multiple of them, but we're going to make those so you can pick them and they'll just appear in the box, and then you can remove them and add them and make that a little bit easier to do. And we've also updated the documentation on all of these, so then you can understand, and we can put that into that GUI as well, so then you understand what they are. And I'd answered a previous question. There is an API call that can give you metadata about all the fields. So that's in the documentation. So if you want to pull back information about the what are all the available options and what they mean, and how they correspond to the underlying data model, that you can do an API call for that as well.
Okay, and I mean, Campbell, is it worth mentioning that the XBRL API can be used on any database? It is an open API, and you know, we leverage it for our own XBRL US database, but if you have your own database, you can also use the API because it's designed to be used on any kind of XBRL database, which is obviously the whole point of standardization.
I think it's more accurate to say it's not proprietary. If you want to go and implement your own implementation of it, then there's no restriction on you doing that.
Okay, and then one other question we received: how secure a validation is the validation API? Not quite sure I understand it.
Well, I can answer part of that question. And they said, you know, just on that, none of the data is actually maintained on our side. We don't maintain any of the information there. Once it's submitted, it's basically processed and the results are returned. The only information that we have is a log to say that you've made a submission, and who made the submission, and some high level facts about that, you know, like what was the documents, I think what was the document name. So if someone has an issue, then we can see if it actually made it to the server or not. And then we do have an SSA 18 review. I think we did one a year ago, where we have an independent auditor come in and do a controls review. So if you're a filer member and you want to get that, then reach out to us and we can give you a copy of that report as well.
Okay. I think we're a little bit past our time here. And there may be a few additional questions we haven't covered, but we can, you know, for those that we haven't answered either live or, you know, by keying the question, the answer in, you know, I think we'll come back and get back to you, but we will be sending out the replay of the event today. Plus, you know, I think that the video that I mentioned that David did that kind of that walks you through how to actually get the add-in is excellent. And I used it, you know, the first time I got the add-in, so I'll send that out as well. And, you know, we will be having, you know, more events like this. And so please, you know, watch your email and, you know, forward this on to colleagues that are also looking to use data. David, Campbell, Mark, anything else you want to say?
No,
No, that's it.
No, that's it. Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you.